I think our Prime Minister represents something which is different from Hindutva. He represents today a kind of, yes, this is possible, that this is possible for the people of India. This has nothing to do with Hindutva, but this is something which the people of India are watching. It is also true that he does things which are very personal to him, very individual and very personal in the sense of doesn't matter that he is from the BJP or he is Narendra Modi. His is a very sui generis situation because he is Narendra Modi and just that. Just that. It is
That is, in
irrelevant.
a sense, the explanation of his enormous hold over this country.
Yes, I think so. His personality has made a mark which has to be accepted and respected by everybody. This is like in calendric terms, like Vikram Samvat. This is Modi Samvat. The people of India do see him as somebody who is taking India into a kind of supremacy. He is a supremacist. We must understand that. That is the essentiality of him. Mr. Narendra Modi is a supremacist.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. My guest today has written an ambitious personal history of independent India. It's an attempt to combine his own life story with that of the country. And he's had a privileged life, often at the very epicenter of power and critical national decisions. Here is the book. It's called The Undying Light, and it's available on Amazon from the 1st of April. Joining me now is its author, Mahatma Gandhi's grandson and the former governor of West Bengal, Gopal Krishna Gandhi. Mr. Gandhi, in the epilogue of your book, you write, and I'm quoting, I cannot say the light of India has brightened after independence. And you add that in 5 areas, that light is getting dimmed by the hour. Let's talk about that to start with. First, you ask, are India's minorities being subjected to the authority of the majority? Are you worried that India's constitutional secularism is getting replaced by majoritarian behavior and thinking?
India has been defined as a majority of minorities. And that, I think, is the truest statement I've heard about India. A Kashmiri Pandit in the valley is in a minority, and she or he is afraid. A Muslim in Jammu who is afraid that a shootout in the valley might visit him in Jammu with violence, he is in a minority in Jammu. Likewise, different parts of India. The Sikhs in Delhi were a minority. 1984, they were in fear. So, majoritarianism is not about Hindu majoritarianism in India as a whole only. It is that, but it is not that only. Minority and majority situations change from scene to scene.
But you are worried that majoritarianism is spreading.
The idea that the largest segment of a population in a particular place has to have the dominant voice is spreading. And that dominant voice is part of a sense of entitlement. Entitlement not just to whatever the state offers, but entitlement to social compliance. That is very worrisome. That is what worries me.
Secondly, you also worry that the Constitution's guarantees and democracy's nostrums seem easy prey to those who can subvert them. Are you worried that our institutions and perhaps more broadly our rights and liberties are coming increasingly under threat?
The institutions of the state, the institutions which the Constitution nurtured, are under what may be called tension or strain for the reason that those who cherish those institutions are not those who win elections. And elections yield and place in power people who believe that in an electoral democracy, institutions have to be subordinate to the elected representatives of the country. Now, that is an understandable position because we are a democracy. But that balance of mutual respect, which the Constitution expected in the country, that balance has tilted in favor of what may be called entitlement over and above constitutional guarantees.
In short, what you're saying is that those that we elect to high office and power don't always respect the institutions and the rights and liberties of citizens. That's what you're saying.
They would respect them, they would want to respect them, but the temptation to assert an independence above those institutions, an entitlement and a prerogative above those institutions is very strong. And I'm afraid the institutions of culture, courtesy, and protocol govern institutions, but not those in political power.
The third fear that you write about in the epilogue is one that is particularly pertinent today. You ask, will history be used in India as a tool for control, for political aggrandizement, by creating new myths of victimhood and tools for vendetta? Here I take it you have incidents like Sambal and Aurangzeb's grave in mind, as well as the wider vilification of India's Muslim history and its heritage and culture.
I believe that history has been written by two persons, historians and by social memory. Social memory creates history out of what can be called the bequest of mythology and folklore. Those are not to be dismissed, but they have to be seen as something which are on the side of selfhood, not of history, on the side of one's own sense of a place in the scroll of time which is not history.
I'm going to interrupt you and ask you to put that into simple English for the audience because the way you're phrasing it may not be easy for people to follow. Are you saying that we are victimizing history and converting it into a weapon to use against Muslims?
Simple English or simple Hindi, Mr. Thapar, is not what I'm missing in what I said. What I'm missing in what I said, and there I agree with you, is in speaking in generalized terms rather than specific terms. Yes, you are right. I believe the aggrandizement of individual icons from the scrolls of history and from the rolls of memory is often at the expense of accuracy. It fulfills something in people's hearts, but at the cost of veracity. Veracity is essential to history. Passion is a feature of social memory.
But the result is that history is then used as a weapon against Muslims.
Yes, that is true. History has been used against Muslims. History has also been used not directly to victimize, say, those who belong to the Sikh tradition, but it has been used in a sense to marginalize sections of the community of India, including the Dalits, including, I would say, women in general. And that is the task of a historian to rectify.
Now, alongside all of this, you also believe that fear has descended like a haze over the country's thinking mind. Here, I believe it's the media that worries you most of all. You write, independent India's press, television channels, and social media platforms not only had their vocal cords go silent, but be transplanted by new ones that sang like a school choir, new songs in praise of the Modi era. Doesn't that mean Mr. Modi has come to dominate our thinking and we, in a sense, have subjugated ourselves?
Yes, yes, Mr. Thapar. Fear like love can only be experienced and explained by the person who feels that fear and who feels that love. I know that that fear is widespread. It is like a miasma. It is like a haze. I do not know if Mr. Modi himself wants that fear, but he has certainly made many, many people, particularly in the media, extremely cautious. I just want to say here in a throwback, Mr. Thapar, that in the Nehru era, Nehru reveled in what could be called honest criticism. He asked cartoonist Shankar not to spare him, and a sharp cartoon is an ornament on a politician's lapel. That is what is missed today. I think the insecurity of politicians, and not just Mr. Modi, but across political parties, the insecurity of politicians against, against legitimate and valid criticism is, I think, a casualty in independent India.
How much of the fault, or to use a more colloquial term, how much of the blame lies with the media for failing to stand up and tell truth to power? And how much of the fault and blame lies with people like Modi who don't like cartoons that are critical of them?
It is a prize that is shared in common by both. It has been received by two pairs of hands by both. And I know that there are great exceptions in the media, so great as to make the general almost seem unimportant. But the general trend today, or the general fact today, is that the pen halts itself, pauses before putting on paper what it would have not paused or halted, say, 30 or 40 years ago. This was very, very true of Mrs. Indira Gandhi's emergency era, and even after emergency when she was in power. Mrs. Gandhi was not an easy head of state or head of government for the media to deal with. And that has continued now into what may be called the Modi era.
I hear what you're saying, but there is something else that's also true. Most of what you refer to and talk about has either begun since 2014 when Narendra Modi came to power, or at least it's accelerated and exacerbated since then. Would you accept that? That the trend may have existed earlier, but it's exacerbated and accelerated since 2014.
It is not difficult to accept that, not difficult to agree with that, Mr. Thapar. But as somebody who lived in the emergency months, I know how everyone shuddered and shivered at the prospect of the knock on the midnight hour.
Where does this leave India? It's the world's biggest democracy. We boast of that. And yet, in fundamental areas where we should have the capacity to stand up and defy and resist, we seem to buckle under pressure. Where does that leave India?
It leaves India at the crossroads of choice. And Mr. Thapar, I believe many, many people, many including those in the media, both visual and print, have taken that choice. The very fact that we are having this discussion today shows that choices have been, can be made, and they are being made.
But the
They are,
wrong choice is being made, the choice to buckle rather than to resist.
that choice is being made by many, but the fact that the choice is being made in the right direction, in the right manner, on the side of truth to power, is a very major fact, which is why I feel, Mr. Thapar, that the light of truth in India has been dimming, but is undying.
The sad part is it's dimming. The fact that it's undying is your hope or maybe your cherished wish. But the fact that it's dimming is the sad part. It shouldn't be dimming, it should be burning brightly.
It should be, and I can't but recall, Mr. Thapar, a comment which was once made to me by Mr. Inder Gujral when he was Prime Minister. He said in Hindi, and I'll translate for those who don't know Hindi, which are a large number in our country. He said, Aaj ki raat जब चिराग जलाओ, ऊंची रखो लो. Tonight, when you light the tapers, keep the flames high. He was so right. He was so right. There are
Absolute,
many who
which
keep the
is
tapers
why
high.
which is why it's so sad that you should believe that that light is getting dimmer by the hour. That
Yes.
is the sad part. But let's at this point talk directly about Narendra Modi. You say of him, and I'm quoting, he was perceived by his electors and later by a large arc of society as a man who has risen from utter non privilege, with no ancestry to flaunt, no estate, factory, or enterprise to display. Does that not suggest that he's off the people to a far greater extent than any of his predecessors and probably all of his leading contemporaries? And is that not, in a sense, the source of his popularity, maybe even his strength?
It is indeed. He is popular as a result of his being from among the masses, from among the people without the taint of preferment which comes with privilege, which includes the privilege of high birth. But I must say here that Lal Bahadur Shastri was also like that. And so I must say, Dr. Manmohan Singh, he was not born to privilege, and yet he rose to the highest pinnacles of office. And Nehru, let us not forget, though he was the son of Motilal Nehru and the anointed heir of the Mahatma, there was an automatic and natural and unself-conscious identification in that man with the masses of India, which began during the freedom struggle. And Nehru never imagined during the freedom struggle that he will one day be Prime Minister of the country. He had plunged into
But
it.
there's a big difference, isn't there? Manmohan Singh and Lal Bahadur Shastri were not in their times either as popular as Narendra Modi is today, nor as strong. The truth is that in both those capacities, Narendra Modi has established a sort of sui generis status for himself.
I'll come to that in a moment, but finish the sentence which I couldn't finish, which is about Nehru, and which is this, that Nehru was born to privilege, but he lived in the present moment among the people, not just as a Democrat and as a socialist, but as a human being. And now to come to Manmohan Singh and Lal Bahadur Shastri. There was a time, Mr. Thapar, when Lal Bahadur Shastri, when he appeared on the screen as Prime Minister, was laughed at. But then there was a time after 1965 when the loudest applause greeted his appearance on the screen, and he was immensely popular. And I believe it's a great tragedy that he died when he died. And as for Dr. Manmohan Singh, I must say this, that he may not have been powerful and popular in the same sense as our present Prime Minister
But
is.
the question was not about those two. Those were simply brought up as a comparison. The question was that Narendra Modi has established his popularity and his strength in a sui generis capacity. It's about Modi we're talking.
Yes, it is about Modi we are talking, but we are not talking about Modi in an abstraction. We are talking about Modi in a continuum. Yes, you are right. It is sui generis, but it is sui generis in the sense in which he is himself sui generis because he came not only from relative non-privilege, but also from something like relative ignorance. People outside of Gujarat hardly knew of him. So that is something sui generis. But, and I'll round off what I say about Mr. Modi, that is his strength. And that is also the strength of this particular establishment. But it does not make him less vulnerable. It does not make him less vulnerable because anybody in India who has watched Indian politics will know that just as a person can become suddenly very popular, a person can become suddenly the opposite.
Does that suggest the fact that he remains vulnerable and just as he becomes very popular very quickly, he can the opposite can happen equally quickly as well? Does that suggest that what he represents, in particular Hindutva, may not be here to stay?
I think Our Prime Minister represents something which is different from Hindutva. He represents today a kind of, yes, this is possible, that this is possible for the people of India means here is a man who knows and meets on equal terms the Prime Minister of every country, the head of state of Ukraine, the head of state of Russia, the head of state of the United States. And I completely agree with Shashi Tharoor when he says that this is a signal achievement. This has nothing to do with Hindutva, but this is something which the people of India are watching. It is also true that he does things which are very personal to him, very individual and very personal in the sense of doesn't matter that he is from the BJP or he is Narendra Modi. His is a very sui generis situation because he is Narendra Modi and just that. Just that. It is
That is, in
irrelevant.
a sense, the explanation of his enormous hold over this country.
Yes, I think so. His personality has made a mark which has to be accepted and respected by everybody. This is like in calendric terms, like Vikram Samvat. This is Modi Samvat. And I think Mr. Mallikarjuna Kharge was very right the other day in Parliament when he said to members of the government, don't flatter yourself. You are here because of Mr. Modi. And this is Mr. Kharge who said, he knows reality, the reality of politics.
In a very real sense, you're conveying the same answer in your book when you make a very astute observation about the character and type of the Indian people. You say, and I'm quoting from your book, as a people, Indians adore the legendary, revere the mythical, and worship the fabulous. This is a form of trusting, believing in, and depending on the seemingly great. We make of the historical figures we love superhuman phantasms. That attitude, that way of looking up and revering is reflected in the relationship between the Indian people and Modi today.
Yes, yes, Mr. Thapar, I would agree with that. I would agree with that completely.
But you also make another point about contemporary India, which in a sense both fuels the relationship between Modi and the country and feeds into it. You say India was now restless, not to be great, just, noble, but strong, powerful, super. Not a nation, but a power, and a major power at that. In fact, a superpower. Modi, in a sense, is feeding this sentiment, he's fueling this sentiment, and to many people, he represents the possibility of it being fulfilled.
Yes, I think the people of India do see him as somebody who is taking India into a kind of supremacy. He is a supremacist. We must understand that. That is the essentiality of him. Mr. Narendra Modi is a supremacist. And I say this in a value neutral sense. He wants India to be supreme and he wants himself to be supreme in India. And the two go together, which is why I think today is his Samvat. It is his era. One may or may not like him, one may or may not agree with him, but one has to agree with this reading of the situation. And thank God we are a democracy, for that can change.
How likely is it to change fairly soon? How likely is it that this Samvat, as you call it, this era, as you call it, will last for many, many years, maybe over a decade and more?
It can last, but India is the land of surprises. India is the land of faith, of tradition, one of which is surprise. Who would have thought in 1977 that Mrs. Indira Gandhi will be back? A tyrant is despised, but a tyrant in defeat is sympathized with. India forgives even if it does not forget. India rehabilitates even if it does not exonerate. India is a land of surprises.
Okay. Now, in this context, you make a third important point about India. You say the end is what was important to India now, not the means. And in a very real sense, that also typifies the Modi era. Isn't that an indication of how far India has moved from Mahatma Gandhi's thinking?
It has moved far from Mahatma Gandhi's India, it has moved far from Gokhale's and Nauroji's India, it has also moved far from Rabindranath Tagore's India, where Rabindranath Tagore, Mr. Thapar, showed the mirror to Mahatma Gandhi himself when Mahatma Gandhi was in a phase of his politics encouraging the burning of foreign cloth. Tagore told him, "This is anger." And he quoted a Pali text, Akkodhena jite kodham. Non-anger wins over anger. So this is ends and means being taught to the Mahatma himself by the Gurudev. And so yes, the highest of mortals, the highest of human beings who have a sense of the importance of means are also short of the ultimate ethics of high means. Today, yes, absolutely. The end is more important than the means. End in the triumph of capital investment, end in the triumph of political investment, and above all, the end in capturing the attention of the masses, whether it be for a commercial, political, social, or ideological, is what matters, not the means.
At this point, Mr. Gandhi, let me ask you, how do you, as the Mahatma's grandson, feel when Godse is praised? And praise is what he increasingly gets from the Indian people, it seems, and when temples are built in his name.
I'll just say this, Mr. Thapar. I'm one of many grandchildren who were born of his four sons, but the people of India know that the Mahatma's assassin represented not just his own instinct, but a certain tendency which believes in smothering humanity. Humanity in the sense of human values, smothering the emotions of love and tolerance. And to quote another grandson of the Mahatma, the most philosophical among them, the late Ramchandra Gandhi, Gandhi was not stopped by 3 bullets. He stopped 3 bullets on their track, the bullets of hatred, suspicion, and violence. And so I believe, Mr. Thapar, that whatever those who share Mr. Godse's views may feel, those who do not, will not be impressed by anything that the defenders of that act and the promoters of that cult will try to do. Mr. Godse was a person with a family. His colleague, Narayan Apte, who was also unfortunately hanged, and I say unfortunately hanged because I believe the death penalty was a very wrong thing to have been awarded to both of them. Narayan Apte left behind a very young widow. We must think of them too as human beings who were impelled or compelled to do what they did. We must not judge them more harshly than they have already been judged, just as they should not be romanticized. I believe we should leave them to their historical size.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, And if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Before I end this interview, I want Mr. Gandhi to turn to another aspect of your book, what you reveal of yourself. And I'll point out to the audience, you've been remarkably honest. First, as your 5 years as Governor of West Bengal came to an end, you write, and I'm quoting, I had sent a word that I would not be staying a day longer when my 5 year term comes to a close. But I would, of course, welcome and be grateful for a second term in West Bengal or a governorship anywhere else. You even asked your secretary to check if the Home Ministry had got this message. But you never got that extension or another governorship. Were you disappointed?
I was indeed, Mr. Thapar. I would be not just dishonest, but I would be worse if I were to deny that. I would have liked a second term. I am not beyond ambition, but I do know that my ambition or my form or trait of ambition is not of the selfish and greedy kind. It is there because ambition is natural in human beings, and I am a very simple and regular fellow.
In 2011, there was a lot of speculation that you could become vice president. Some people even speculated that you might become president. In your diary, you write, I am besieged by phone calls. But again, you got neither job. Was that a second disappointment?
That was a continuing disappointment in a person who has entered the government service, the service of the government of India, with a desire to reach higher and higher. It was a second disappointment, but it was not a particularly serious disappointment because I have known disappointment earlier, as I've also known what may be called, and pardon the pun, as I've also known appointments. I would like very much to be content in my post office phase, but as the great Shankaracharya has said, Angam Galitam Phalitam Mundam, the limbs rot, the hair turns white, but never does ambition leave the human soul.
Was it difficult to write so honestly about something that had disappointed you, maybe even upset you? Most people hide these from others. They certainly don't put it into books so the whole world can read about them. Was it difficult to write so truthfully and honestly about something that at the time must have upset you?
No, Mr. Thap, it was not difficult at all. What would have been much more difficult would have been to say the opposite or conceal this, only to be told by those who read the book and the reviewers who review the book, Mr. Gandhi, you are being too kind to yourself. That would have been a very difficult reputation to live with. Mr. Thapar, I know honesty is the best policy.
Finally, I'm also struck by what you write about T.N. Seshan, the former Chief Election Commissioner. You call him a potent, self-loading, self-ejecting, self-directing cannonball. For someone who's otherwise very cautious and polite about the other people that he refers to, I take it this is a sign that you don't admire Seshan, perhaps even respect him.
I know Mr. Seshan, I knew Mr. Seshan, but not as an adversary or as a person who is exposing his personality. I knew him for his qualities, I knew him for his vulnerability. But A little further down in the same paragraph, I also speak of his very human qualities when he told me, Gopal, can you please ring my wife and tell her I am on my way home? That just showed that this person who imagined himself suddenly to be wielding the highest possible power in the country showed him as a very human being who cared for Jayalakshmi Amma, his wife, waiting for him in his house. Mr. Seshan was, like many civil servants, in an illusion of grandeur, but he was also within himself a person who had to, at the end of the day, say to his wife, I'm back home.
But he was a person who was, as you put it, in an illusion of grandeur.
Yeah, that's right. And grandeur itself, Mr. Thapar, is an illusion. Is something which I have tried to say in my book. The two persons who had no illusion of grandeur, whom I have written about. And I'm not talking of the Mahatma, because he speaks for himself. He needs no advocacy. The two persons who had no illusions of grandeur were Jayaprakash Narayan, the hero of my heroes, and C. Rajagopalachari, who left the highest office in the land without a single backward glance.
And your grandfather.
It so happens, yes, Mr. Thapar, my mother's father.
But there's something else about T.N. Seshan that you reveal in your book that will come as a surprise to the audience, his vaulting ambition. You say in 1990, when Rajiv Gandhi got assassinated in the middle of the elections, it was Seshan who informed the president. He rushed to Rashtrapati Bhavan in the middle of the night. He wanted the election stopped straight away. And then you add, he was ready to play a role beyond his office of CEC, and if the president thought fit, he could serve as the country's home minister. Seshan was a very ambitious man who, even at this moment of dreadful, shaking national loss, was seeking opportunities for himself.
I need not add anything to what I have written, Mr. Thapar. That is what Mr. Seshan was. But I must say, in the interests of the civil service's own character, that at the same time we had Mr. Naresh Chandra, who was the principal secretary to the Prime Minister, who came and told the President, Sir, Rajiv Gandhi was an outstanding leader. We have lost an outstanding leader. But he was not the Prime Minister. Mr. Chandrasekhar is the Prime Minister. There is a government in office. There is no emergency. We will handle the situation. Mr. President, rest assured, the government is in charge.
And
So
you
that
don't need T.N. Seshan as home minister at this point of time.
Mr. T.N. Seshan and Mr. Naresh Chandra were both pillars of the civil service. One who shows a great vaulting ambition to quote Shakespeare, and the other who shows balance, proportion, and maturity.
I'll leave it there, Mr. Gandhi. I'll hold up your book for the audience to see once again. There it is, The Undying Light. It's available on Amazon from the 1st of April. Thank you very much for the time you've given me. Take care. Stay safe.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.